New reporting in the New York Times tonight. The headline reads, Trump sought to fire Mueller in December, which makes it now two instances that we know about. Maggie Haberman and Michael Schmidt share a byline on this one. Maggie's, of course, a CNN political analyst as well. She joins us by phone. So, Maggie, you had reported on the previous incident of the president apparently wanting to fire Robert Mueller, and which was stopped by Don McGahn, the White House counsel. Explain how this all played out now again in just this past December.
Sure, and Anderson, this is just one of several instances where the president has come pretty close to dealing with dispatching with Mueller in some way. This is one of the most detailed, and it's the one that's, I think, the most similar to what we are seeing right now in terms of Michael Cohen and why the president feels like that violated a red line. In December, there were erroneous news reports that Mueller had subpoenaed records from Deutsche Bank related to the president's finances. It's not clear that there was something specific that the president actually had at Deutsche Bank. It's not even clear to me that he did have loans current or money current with Deutsche Bank. I think that the notion of Mueller getting near his finances drove him to a different degree of anger. He told lawyers and advisors this crosses a red line. He was furious. His lawyers worked hurriedly to figure out exactly what was going on, and got a rare assurance and response from Mueller's folks, no, we did not do that subpoena. That is not correct. And they were able to walk the president back from the ledge. But it does show you how close he can get himself. And I understand how many people in the White House have come to see this as part of the fabric of life there. Most of them dismiss this as this is just how he talks. He is blowing off steam. One White House official said to me today, don't you think that he has suggested firing Rod Rosenstein about 10 times today? And they were being sort of sarcastic, but the point being, he says this stuff a lot. However, in at least one instance, in the case of James Comey, the FBI director, he did fire him. So it's very hard to dismiss it all as just ventilation and blowing off steam.
The president was ready to do this, I just want to be clear, because it crossed the red line that he had said or he talked about with you and your colleagues in an interview.
Correct. I mean, he thought it had. It turned out that it didn't. But yes, it was that he felt that it had violated the quote-unquote red line, which was what he had said in an Oval Office interview with my colleagues, Mike Schmidt and Peter Baker and myself, about the scope of Mueller's investigation, that, that his charge is Russia and the things that relate to the president's, finances or his family's finances would not be applicable there.
I'm wondering how all of this, this story about the wanting to fire Mueller in December leads us to the moment we're in right now, with the president apparently actively considering firing Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein.
I think that, again, this is something that a line that he repeatedly walks up to, and in the past, and to Gloria's point, there often are people, and there still are, telling him this is a very bad idea. That has happened before. It is often some combination of lawyers, legal advisors, friends, White House advisors. There are fewer of those people now than existed before. And I think that is part of what makes this more precarious. Add to that the fact that everyone I've spoken to, and I think that CNN's reporting is similar, everyone I've spoken to says this is different. The president's level of frustration and I would use the word helplessness, because he has no control here, and there are a few things that drive him crazier than that, are at a peak. He is doing what he always does, which is sitting and watching us talk. He's watching television. He's watching news, and he is getting very, very angry. The moods are not constant. It is not every second of every day, but it is creating a sense of uncertainty in the White House that is different than the usual churn we have seen.
Fascinating. Maggie Haberman, appreciate that. I want to bring in our panel, legal and journalistic. Josh Campbell is joining us, Jeffrey Toobin, and Carl Bernstein. So, Jeff, this the New York Times reporting, did the president, he did draw that red line when it came to his finances in Deutsche Bank. Does it make sense to you that, just in December, for the second time, he would have been talking about firing Mueller?
Sure, it makes sense, given what we know about the president and his character. But let's just step back and, remember, this red line is something of his own invention that he thinks is some line between appropriate and inappropriate. It's important to remember that we are talking here about a president who may be firing Justice Department officials and prosecutors for doing their jobs. Rod Rosenstein has done nothing wrong. He has done his job, yet it seems like, and I certainly believe the reporting of our colleagues, that he is on the verge of losing his job because he did the right thing. So I think it is totally believable that the president is considering firing Rosenstein, that he almost fired Mueller in December and earlier last year. But we can't lose perspective on the fact that this is wrong. This whole approach to being president is wrong, but this is how things are working.
Jeff, I mean, the other thing about this reporting is that the president was about to fire Mueller for something that turned out not to even be true. I mean, that there was no subpoenaing of his bank records at Deutsche Bank, if he even had bank records there. What does that say to you about how sensitive he is about all of this?
Well, it says that, you know, he is deeply worried about his personal finances being looked into. He has invented this standard that there is some red line, as he said in this interview with the Times several months ago. But this red line is not some sort of legal concept. It is a personal indulgence. It is a personal imagined rule that the president came up with. And, you know, fortunately, I guess, for the world, his lawyers checked out that the subpoena never even happened. So this crisis was forestalled, but we seem to be heading for another one, this time aimed at Rod Rosenstein, at least initially, instead of Bob Mueller.
Yeah, I mean, Carl, just in terms of the reporting that the president, you know, is considering firing Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, do you feel like we're on the verge of a Saturday night massacre here? Because what would be the point of firing Rosenstein if it's not in order to have some sort of impact on Mueller and the investigation?
We're in a constitutional crisis. The President of the United States has made clear to those around him, as those who are closest to him in the White House and among his friends, that he is determined to shut down this investigation. And the moment he has chosen to actually act on it, apparently, is when the special prosecutor and other prosecutors have gotten hold of his lawyers' computers, which have perhaps evidence of real conspiracy between the President of the United States and others. Or there could be exculpatory information there if, as the President maintains, and few even around him believe that there is no there and that this is really a witch hunt. We have a President of the United States willing to risk a constitutional crisis for this nation so he can avoid legitimate investigation and letting the facts roll out the way they ought to the end of an investigation. And if it's a witch hunt, there is plenty of time at the end, and there'd be hell to pay if Mr. Mueller or anybody else, Rosenstein, were conducting a witch hunt. This is no witch hunt. This is about a lawless President of the United States determined to avoid accountability.
Josh, would firing Rosenstein necessarily get what the president likely wants, which is the ability to contain the special counsel investigation?
Well, so there are two prongs here. I mean, the first is he can set additional parameters. So let's take the example of firing Rosenstein. They put in someone in place who's actually maybe going to do the president's bidding and further narrow the scope of what Bob Mueller can do. That's one option. If they dissolve the special counsel completely, that doesn't make the investigation go away. So you send the FBI agents home, you send the prosecutors back to their districts, the case will still continue because the FBI, if they're in possession of information or allegation of a crime, they're not simply going to stop investigating simply because they don't have that process in place.
Wait a second. I think that's overly optimistic about the work of the FBI. If Robert Mueller is fired and this investigation technically still exists, but there's no one in charge of it, Donald Trump wins.
I didn't say he didn't win. What I'm saying is that the counterintelligence agents at the FBI that are working the case, they don't simply go away. And you don't shred your files and, case closed. That actually requires a process. And if there's additional information, if there's an allegation that there's a crime, they don't simply stop investigating. That will
but if
continue.
There's nobody like a Mueller running the investigation, and with the powers that Mueller has and the team that he has assembled, isn't it effectively over? I mean, Jeff, it would be effectively over.
Of course, it would be over. I mean, the idea that the FBI could sort of do this on its own is just it's not realistic. Much as we admire the good work of the FBI, I mean, this is why we have independent counsels and special counsels, is because they have to lead investigations that are independent of the political superstructure of the president's party.
But Jeff, in terms of the impact on Mueller, potentially of, say, Rosenstein is fired, he would then be, I assume, replaced by the person under him, who would then oversee the Mueller investigation. To whatever
at the
effect,
moment,
we don't know.
We're in some uncharted waters, especially because there's no associate attorney general at this point. I think it would be the Solicitor General, Noel Francisco, or it could be another person designated by the Attorney General to supervise Mueller. But at least initially, I don't think there would be any change in the Mueller investigation. But if a new person came in and started restricting what Mueller could do, that would be a very serious limitation on his power.